Hello, ladies and gents. So, welcome to the second video in our series of universal materials. Today, going to be moving on from literary elements and devices, and we're going to be talking about symbolism and imagery, which, as I mentioned in the last video, is in and of itself a independent literary device. However, it is one of the most universally used and, in my professional opinion, one of the most useful to understand for its complexity and its depth and just the sheer richness of information that it can give you and the level of competence that it can give you when you're trying to actually comprehend literature, but really any form of art in life. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the basics of symbolism, and as it says, imagery a little bit as well. But we're also going to have a little section that I've tagged on to symbolism about the metaphorical patterns that we're going to see in other forms of art, in life, and in literature as well, and just kind of see what we can grasp from those metaphors or those structures once we finish this up. So let's begin. First of all, universal symbols are what we are talking about here. We are not talking about all symbols or just symbols in general. Now, what do I mean by universal? As it says here, symbols that are iconic elements, colors, and images that have appeared in every part of the world in one way or another, and therefore carry a similar meaning in all cultures. Now, what does that really mean? Let's translate that. That means the symbols we're looking at are going to be things that could be recognized for the vast majority of human beings across the vast majority of geographical locations in the world, across the vast majority of years of human history. So whether it's somebody in sub-Saharan Africa 10,000 years ago versus it's someone, in upstate New York 2 days ago. These symbols should carry some resonance for all those people. Now, one other thing we need to keep in mind when we're talking about such basic and such universal symbols is this concept of context. Context is a major element and a major factor in influencing the meaning of a particular symbol. So you can have a singular symbol, but in putting it in different contexts and even pairing it with other symbols completely changes the meaning of it. This is why, in some sense, guys, symbolism is sort of like its own language. It's why, the obvious example is like we used to actually communicate in images, but we are still doing that in a more complex and in a more beautiful way in artwork. The examples of that are below. You'll see that I've given you essentially just three symbols. One of them is fire, one of them is a dragon, and one of them is a swastika. Now, the historical context of these particular symbols and the literary context and the geographical context really changes their meaning. So, for example, the swastika is the most basic one. The one on the left here, of course, with the blood flag colors, is the symbol of the National Socialist Party, Nazi Party of Germany. And it conjures up all of the intended and unintended meaning that the creators of that symbol wanted it to invoke. However, if we left Germany in 1945 and then took a plane over to India at 1945, and we were walking around in some of the temples in the most ancient parts of that country, and we looked on top of one of the entrances to those temples, we would see that swastika, something that's slightly turned, has the dots, and there's not the blood flag colors with it. Is it the same symbol? It is not. It carries a completely different meaning with it now. It means something very different. It doesn't mean, racial supremacy and all these kind of racist policies. It means light and enlightenment. It's actually a symbol of the sun. So you'll see that's a very cliche, very classic example as to how symbols are completely changing their meaning depending on the context. The dragon is one that's also pretty common and popular. We're going to talk about dragons in a minute. The dragon over here in the east is a symbol of nature, is a symbol of strength, a symbol of spirituality, and the deeper kind of magic and parts of the world. Whereas the dragon over here in the West is a symbol of the diabolic, the satanic, and the monstrous kind of parts of reality. So it carries with it a very negative sort of meaning. Now, fire, one of my personal favorite symbols, is, as we're going to see when we get to the elements here, literally the four elements of symbolism, or within symbolism, can have a completely different context. So, for example, if I told you over here, when you're thinking about the symbolic meaning of fire, and if I asked you, hey, talk to me about that in, let's say, a religious context, you would say, oh, well, fire is clearly a symbol of hell or the devil or satanic sort of things. I would actually correct you a little bit and say that no, it can be when Jesus, for example, in the New Testament is speaking about hell, he always uses these fiery, gnashing of teeth and the burning sort of imagery, like Gehenna and all this stuff. However, if you do a Google search or a control find search of all the different times fire is referenced in the Bible, it's much more common that it is actually a symbol associated with the divine, with God himself. So God is actually associated with fire much more so than the devil. So just a really kind of three basic ideas or three basic examples of how symbolism can change and the meanings can change pretty dramatically depending on where we're looking at the particular symbol in question. Okay, that being said, let's go through the tiers of examples of symbolism real quick and kind of break through some of the meanings of these elements we would see in literature, in artwork, and in life overall. The most basic thing that we register first and foremost would be color, right? That would be the simple, easy way or easy beginning with symbolism. So the symbol of light, light itself. What does light symbolize for us as human beings? Well, in my notes, I'm giving you a whole slew of particular meanings. If you're writing these down for class, or if you're just kind of trying to get a gist of them, you do not need to ever copy all of these down, but I would suggest you probably identify at least two or three that you really identify with or see that's a particularly useful significance of this particular symbol. So the symbol of light is usually symbolic of knowledge, safety, goodness, holiness, divinity, and reality itself. So what I'd like to do is talk for a minute about why some of these ideas, or these meanings, are associated with this thing called light. Why knowledge? Well, think back to when you're, 5 years old or 15 years old or 50 years old and you're afraid of the dark in your room. What is the easy way to dispel the fear of the dark? It is to turn on the lights. Light reveals things, hence the term enlightenment. It is to reveal and to provide knowledge. So therefore, light, a flame, a lantern is usually a symbol of academia, is usually a symbol of your, thoughts, hence the light bulb kind of going off on your head. It's like, that's when the light has shined on the darkness of our ignorance. Therefore, it is also has also become a symbol of safety for us. So if you think back in the evolution of the human society, the human biological creature that we are, we are afraid naturally and maybe rightly of the dark because that's where the predators lurk. That's where creatures would lurk. That's where enemies would hide. And we wouldn't be able to see them. So we wouldn't know where these threats are in this kind of chaotic unknown of the darkness. And so therefore light and fire and things that provide light provide us with this sense of safety, hence our link with that particular symbolic meaning. Therefore, you can kind of see the pattern here. It's knowledge, it's safety. All of these things are good. All of these things are morally good. It is good to have knowledge. It is good to be wise. It is good to be safe generally. We like safety. We like to provide safety. So in a particularly religious context, we start to really link light with all of the things that we would call holy, divine, good, and all that kind of stuff. And so overall, light becomes a symbol of reality itself, of all of reality kind of revealed before us. So that's light, a very basic one. And you can kind of foretell or foresee what the next one's going to be, of course, it's darkness. In contrast to the symbol before this symbol is described by its meaning of mystery, the unknown, danger, evil, and lies. So why? Why mystery? Because it's the unknown. We're not sure, right? Darkness in and of itself might not be an inherently bad thing, but what's hiding within the darkness might be bad, right? So it's not the water that's bad, it's the shark that's underneath it that's about to eat you. It's that kind of thing. It's not the under the bed is particularly bad. It's the monster that's under there that's going to get you. So that's why we have this kind of mystery and the unknown linked with darkness. Hence the association with danger, therefore. And as I kind of hinted a little bit here with the pictures I chose, the woods, right, wilderness is associated with this as well. You'll see once we get to the later part of this particular discussion that darkness, wilderness, chaos, water are all kind of linked in our imagination because of the way that they can hide things, they can hide enemies, they can hide monsters, and make things particularly frightening for us. Hence the association, of course, with darkness and evil, like with the previous symbol with light, eventually becoming an association of goodness. We have darkness being associated with evil. And of course, lies as well, as opposed to revealing things. We are, the more dark our mind gets, the more full of misunderstanding, the more full of lies and misconceptions it becomes. Red. Okay, now more color proper sort of things. So the symbol of red. And we're not going to go through all the colors. We're going to do the primary colors first. So red. Why is red such a popular symbol? Is this such a universal symbol? What does it mean? It is usually associated with a lot of things: of fire, blood, war, danger, love, courage, passion, and sin. Let's take a few of those. And the way that I usually like to do this with my students is to ask them to think in a kind of in a sense of like a developing human walking around the natural world in the early stages of human evolution. What would we see? What would be maybe the first thing that our mind would see or that we would perceive? What would be the first instance of red in the world? Some people would say a flower or a fruit. It's like, okay, so we see flowers, we see fruits. Well, fruits are good. Fruit provides something that we want, something that we desire, something that is good, something that is nurturing to us. That's all good. The other place we would see blood, of course, blood, give it away. We would see red, of course, is blood, right? So if you kill an animal, there's going to be blood pouring out of it. If you kill a human being or if you injure yourself, you're going to see blood pouring out of that person. So we associate the color red with blood. Now, you can kind of see a problem here. One symbol is going to lead into another. So all of the things here, or a lot, not all of them, but a lot of these terms could be linked with their own symbols. Like fire, as we're going to see, is its own symbol. Blood is its own symbol. War is a symbol in of itself. So when we say that red is associated with these things, we kind of need to remember that symbols can sort of link together in their meaning. So for instance, let's look at something more abstract. Passion. Why is red associated with passion, with intense emotions? You hear people say things like, I saw red, when I was playing Fortnite the other day. It's like, yeah, I see red. It's like, what do you mean? You mean you're getting angry. Okay, so why anger? Why passion? Why is this associated with red? Well, maybe because you're linking it with blood, right? Like I want to go spill someone's blood, something violent like that. Possibly. I think it's also linked with, the flush. Like if you're flushed with passion, you get red. Like you have looks like your veins are going to burst out of your head. You actually do get red, depending on how pale you were. And that's also, by the way, one of the reasons why we would link red with the ideas of love and of like romance, is because when you are in love with someone, when you're kind of really excited to see that person, or you're near that person, or maybe you're nervous, you're going to flush, basically. So we've recognized that and linked blood and red and love and all these things together. Why is it associated with war and danger? It's pretty obvious. It's because you're going to have the possibility of blood spill is going to be present there. Okay. So, and then of course, why sin? Why do we associate red with sin? Well, we think back to the idea of light, and we can think of the color white, as something pure, as something clean. If you splatter red all over that, it's very vibrant, it's very kind of clearly a stain on the particular, on that white sheet or on that white cloth. So it's developed, of course, as an image of sin as well. Now, the next primary color is blue. Very complicated color right here. So we have a lot of different meanings. It could mean trust. It could mean loyalty. It could mean faith. It could mean heaven, sincerity, devotion, intellect, seriousness, masculinity, etc., etc. So a couple different points on blue. Why do we associate blue with any of these things? Well, same question as with red. Where do we see blue in the natural world? Two basic places. We see it in water and we see it in the sky, okay? As early developing human beings. So why do we associate it with heaven, therefore? Well, we associate it with heaven, of course, because heaven, which also is symbolic. Why do we, the direction of heaven is symbolic, that is. If you believe, depending on what you believe religiously, is heaven literally up in the clouds? Like, can we get in a spaceship and fly up and be in the seventh heaven? Probably not. Most religious people don't believe that. They think heaven is more of an interdimensional sort of thing. It's something outside of the world. So why up? Well, it's because it's something, as we're going to see with other elements too, other discussions here. It's something detached from the world, something detached from this earthly kind of grounded world. So the upwards motion is where we associate heaven with. And so therefore blue, if you walk into some old cathedral, sometimes the entire ceiling is painted blue. So blue becomes a very, very rich, richly religious color because of that. It is also very much associated with masculinity. Now, why do we associate blue with masculinity generally? As we're going to see a pattern here, by the way. Nature is associated with different genders in some sense. That's where the term gender originally comes from, is a linguistic term that means the association of a particular word or object in the world. So why blue and masculinity? Why the sky and masculinity? This is kind of a fun side note that I always teach my classes. Think of it this way. You look at sky gods in ancient religions. So, for example, Odin, you have Thor, you have Zeus, Apollo, Helios, whatever masculine divine figure you want to pick, even God in the Old Testament is the Father, my Father in heaven in the New Testament, all this kind of stuff. Why male? Why? And then, like, the most classic example, of course, is Uranus in Greek mythology. He's literally the father of the father sky. So why? It links back to nature imagery. And so those old kind of nature fertilization imagery, right? So we have the masculine on top that needs to, what's the phrase? Fertilize the earth, basically. So you fertilize the earth becomes, or is of course, therefore linked with growth and something that needs to be fertilized and give forth life in form of plants, animals, and so forth, so on and so forth. Hence why we have Mother Earth and why we have the earth usually as a term that is usually gendered feminine, okay? So that's blue. So relatively complicated, relatively popular, not as common as we're going to see actually with red. But yellow, additionally, the next and the last primary color, symbol of joy, happiness, intellect, friendship, honor, and loyalty. Linked, obviously, in some sense, with light as a symbol or as a symbolic color. But why? Why joy? Why intellect? Why happiness? All this kind of stuff. Well, the intellect stuff we can kind of link back with light. That's kind of an obvious connection. Why joy? It's really essentially just a poetic connection, or kind of an intuitive emotional connection we have with the presence of light, the presence of the sun, and all those things. We link it with joy and happiness. It is better to be, bright and happy than in a gloom, as it were. So that's a pretty easy one to connect with. We're also going to see, of course, you could have, a derivative of this in gold as something valuable, as something eternal. And gold is a symbol of something eternal and valuable. Hence why, a lot of religious, particularly Christian, religious imagery is associated with gold. It's because, we have this eternally lasting, beautiful things. All right. Now, aside from colors, we have something, as I've been referencing, a little more obvious, the elements. When I'm saying elements here, I'm talking about earth, wind, water, fire. I know there's more in the periodic table, but I'm talking about the states of matter that we would call elements poetically. So let's go through all four of those. These are, as we're going to see, more and more complicated the more we get on. But earth, first and foremost. As a symbol of truth, humility, strength, stubbornness, and the material world. Why? Why is any of this associated with the earth? Let's start with truth, the most kind of abstract of these interpretations. Truth is something that is solid, something that is immovable, something that is grounded, something that we really are firm in our belief about. You can see all the different words I'm using, even themselves have a symbolic link with the idea of earth. So it's where we stand on. It's what we stand on. It is our foundation, our stone, basically, our rock that we stand on. And so therefore, and it's also something very, very concrete, very real. It's true. So for example, the term or like the phrase the equation 2 + 2 = 4. You can't really refute that. It's bam, you have it. It's solid. It's right there. You're not going to run through that. Truth is like the brick wall. It's just there. You can't deny it. If you do deny it, you're going to get hurt. Now, why therefore do we link it with humility as well? Well, another fun linguistic trick that I like to teach my students is, what does humility actually mean? The term humilitas from the ancient languages actually doesn't mean what we typically think it means, which is like, oh, it means like you have to be self-abasing and you need to think, oh, I'm not that great, I'm pretty awful, no, I suck, all this kind of stuff. That's not humility, my friends. Humility means honesty. That is a more accurate translation of the term humilitas. So it means to be honest, which, as you just can see, is linked with truth, is just to tell the truth. So someone is humble if they are honest about themselves. So for example, should Shaq, be honest or humble about his height? Is he tall? Yeah, he's tall. It's great. Should Michael Jordan be, humble about his skills? Yeah, by saying that he has very good skills in his particular sport. That's fine. That's all humble. It wouldn't be humble if he was saying, no, I'm actually terrible. No, I'm not that good. I'm not that great. It's like, no, you actually are. Let's say the truth. That idea of being honest and truthful is humility, is the firmness of truth. So we see this very, very frequently in ancient texts, particularly religious texts. Religious texts really like to have the earth be and like rocks be a very common foundation, mountains especially, for this idea of truth. Now, obviously, it's a linked with strength because of the sturdiness of the elements or of the form of matter, stubbornness because it's hard to move, and also the material world. So there is a negative aspect of this as well. It is earthly. It is something that we are easily able to access and easily able to understand. It's not like the spiritual world. It's not like the immaterial world, which is harder to understand. It is something that's very, very concrete, but also very dirty, also very kind of flawed and very impure, as we're going to see, as you can kind of really carry these metaphors through. It's something that needs to be purified and needs to be kind of have the value extracted out of it and cleaned up. Okay. So the forms of this element that I'm talking about themselves could all have different symbolic meanings. So for example, dirt. Is dirt going to have a positive or negative symbolic meaning? Probably more negative because it makes things dirty, dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It's earth still. It's still a material kind of mineral. So it's in this whole family of symbols, but it's negatives generally. It's that we are dust, we are barely substantial. We're blown away so easily. Rocks, something that could be very, very positive if you have a foundation stone. Mountains, something also generally positive. It's these grand, enormous structures leading up to the heavens. So something positive there. The next element, very complicated, the element of water, the state of matter of water, a symbol of life, cleansing, renewal, infinity, chaos, mystery, danger, and drowning. Okay. So right off the bat, why life? Why do we associate water with life? All the biology students are going to jump out of their seats. They're going to say, well, obviously, because we need life. We need life. We need water to create life or to, sustain life. Rain brings forth life. Drinking sustains your life. The waters seem to almost give forth life when we see creatures coming out of them and all this kind of stuff. Think back to like evolution. It's like, okay, fine. So we link it with life. Perfectly reasonable. Cleansing, of course. Okay, we have, how do we cleanse ourselves? With water. Hence the whole symbolic religious understanding of baptism, right? To cleanse off one's sins, one's impurities. The idea of renewal, therefore, right? Like you never feel like a new person when you walk out of the spa, out of a nice hot shower. Yeah, it's the same idea. Infinity is an interesting one. Why infinity? Well, think back again to when early humans were just observing the world and kind of really soaking in the early ideas of symbols in their minds. You are an ancient human being and you come across the ocean. You know, have you ever seen anything so big apart from the sky itself? No. So it has this idea of this everlasting kind of expanse of being, hence infinity. However, there's a dark side to this element as well in chaos. It is something that is not structured. There is no structure. There is no kind of stability in water. It is always ever moving, right? It's ever kind of creating new things, ever kind of bringing forth new things, which is why, by the way, just to kind of foreshadow some more complex meanings in our future videos, or in this video, chaos is also associated with creation and with life. So when I use the term chaos, guys, in this video and moving forward, I don't want you to always associate that with something negative. Yes, chaos can be negative. It can cause damage and can be harmful, but it is also a source of creation. It also helps create things. Hence why we usually associate our really creative people with chaotic behavior. You know, artists can be very creative. Their minds are constantly, changing and doing things. They're very fluid in their personalities. Hence, it's associated with creation. Mystery, obviously, right? We don't know what's beneath the surface of water. Danger, therefore, because it's unstable, because it's mysterious, because it's chaotic. So we have this danger of, floods, of tidal waves, of, just what water can do to us. Okay, so that's water. Pretty basic one. Now, air. The element of air can symbolize presence and unseen presence, like a presence of a god. It can symbolize life itself. It could symbolize the supernatural, as we mentioned, or the lack of control, and even lust, strangely enough, just a lot of kind of passions that are out of control. So let's talk about these. The presence of something supernatural like the divine. Why? Well, can we see air? No, we can't really see it. Aside from particular instances in nature or scientific experiments, we can't really see air all that well. Do we know that it's there? Yes. Therefore it's there. We feel its presence. We know that it's there, but we can't see it or grasp it entirely. It's sort of difficult to comprehend or difficult to perceive. If you're speaking spiritually, that sounds a lot like spiritual things. It sounds a lot like a spirit. It sounds a lot like God. So sure, that makes sense why we would link the two together. Life, therefore, is also associated with air because you think of the breath of life. You think of breathing is something that our ancestors, of course, in perceiving the world associated with life. So something has air, it breathes air, it is alive. A lack of control. Well, go back to something with a lack of stability, something chaotic, right? Winds, hurricanes, typhoons, tornadoes, all this sort of things. It's something that is, looks very out of control. I threw lust in there because I was thinking of Dante and Dante's Inferno in the 9 circles of hell. The circle of lust is just one great whirlwind and tornado. It's this idea of like you are not in control, right? Like the wind is directing you. The wind is a symbol of the passions in medieval literature, so it blows you wherever it will blow you. You're going to go to wherever your feelings lead you, right? Yeah, obviously it has a lot of different forms. That's particularly true with air, just as it was with water. So all of these symbols, again, you want to think not just as like, oh, there's water, there's earth, there's fire. It's what form is it taking and what context is it in? Just like we said in the beginning, the context will determine the meaning of these symbols. Now, my personal favorite symbol, and one of the more complicated ones, is fire. This form of fire, this form of matter that we would call plasma. It is a symbol of light, power, otherworldliness, life, warmth, destruction, and hell. All right. So why? Why do we associate fire with light? For the same reasons that our ancestors would be able to perceive. How do you create light? How do you get light? With fire, with lightning. Simple as that. Like that's the only way to get light. It's the only way light exists in this world is through fire. whether it's the fire that's, millions of miles away above our heads, or it's the fire that we're creating in a lamp, or it's the fire we're creating through electricity. So it's a source of light. Therefore, it's a source of a lot of goodness. Okay, we can just link all the way back to the previous slide about light. Power. Why is fire associated with power? Well, if you want to keep it, again, keep our imaginations back in the early humans kind of mentality, you look at what fire can do, whether it's through wildfires, whether it's through a volcano there, whether it's through what you're able to create with your own fire, it grants you a ton of power, a ton of new innovations that it can bring to your world. The otherworldliness of it is something I really like to focus on, and it really helps us kind of recover this ancient way of thinking and way of perceiving the world. Because if you are an ancient kind of prehistorical human being, yeah, we see the earth, yeah, we see the water, that's pretty cool. Yeah, we get this thing called air. But then you're walking around and then lightning strikes and hits the field, and then this blazing thing that's luminous comes out of it and it starts sweeping across the world. That's really rare. That's really crazy. Like fire is not that common overall in nature. So it's a very, very unique thing and kind of otherworldly thing. There's no other states of matter that are like plasma. It's so strange. It's like it has a form, but you can't totally touch it, but you certainly feel it when you do touch it. It's very, very unique and very otherworldly. Hence, fire's association with the spiritual realm. It's a very, very spiritual sort of element in that sense. Warmth, obviously, all the positives of warmth. So when we're freezing to death, we welcome the notion of fire or the presence of fire. But of course, the negative interpretations abound. Destruction is also a part of this. We have the obvious, example down there of forest fires, of volcanoes, of burning one's flesh, all this kind of stuff. Hence the religious association with fire and hell. I know I mentioned earlier that it's not usually associated, or that it's more often associated with God for all the reasons we just explained. It's pretty clear. But hell is a place, as we're going to talk about in humanities classes with religion. It's a place of destruction. It's a place of the loss of your life. So fire is perfect for that because fire burns things away. It destroys things slowly and very or painfully. So yeah, it's nasty. And yeah, fire, of course, can take many different forms, just like all the other elements, whether it's just sparks, little flames, small fires, forest fires, volcanic fires, the sun, right? So a lot of really rich symbolic meaning with this idea. Okay, shifting from colors, states of matter slash elements now to animals. So now we have like things moving around in the world that we can see. Oh, that thing has a meaning. That thing has a meaning. Let's start with the eagle. So eagles, birds in general, we can broaden that quite dramatically. But let's just talk about the eagle. Symbols of courage, bravery, strength, help, sight, and freedom. I always love, and every year it happens, I ask my ninth graders, hey, why do we associate the eagle with freedom? I only get two answers, and I like to see which one answers first. Some kids will say, oh, because of America. America is the eagle, therefore we associate the eagle with freedom. This is wrong in some degree. Okay, it's correct. Like we do associate the bald eagle with America, but we don't associate it with freedom because of that. That's kind of like getting the order of the symbolic history wrong. Eagles were a symbol of freedom before the eagle became the symbol of America. So the correct logic of what happened there was that we had an eagle associated with freedom. America became associated with freedom. Therefore, we picked the eagle to be our symbol. That's the proper sequence of what happened there. So then going back, why then do we associate them with freedom? Why is an eagle a symbol of freedom? The correct answer that my other half of my students will say is, oh, because it is free. It is not bound. It is not shackled to the earth. It can fly. It can go wherever it wants. It has, almost omnipresent capabilities. It can just go wherever it would will at the time. And that's correct. That's why we associate birds in general with this idea of freedom. Okay. Why courage? Well, because they are predators, right? If we're talking specifically about the eagles, they're the dominant kind of predator in the air, hence the bravery and strength aspect. Help, we associate them with aid, right? Because it's like, they can come out of, my mind's immediately going to Lord of the Rings, the fantasy realm, where something that's flying can come in and help you soar in and save the day, Superman style. Sight, of course, is because they can sit at, higher points in the world and kind of perceive more than we can perceive. Hence why Zeus and Odin are associated with whether it's a raven or an eagle, right? This eagle-eyed kind of vision, this all-seeing kind of presence that these have. So the other thing I would link in your imagination, just to try to link the other symbols together, is we often associate eagles or birds with something spiritual. And you'll, of course, link that in your minds, I hope, with the presence of wings. So a winged figure is usually associated with a spiritual figure. So who am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking, of course, about angels, or our culture's depiction of angels as humanoid figures with wings. Does that literally mean that, I die, I go to heaven, I'm going to see a bunch of dudes walking around with wings? Probably not. I think what those symbols are trying to communicate is that these are persons who are at once physical, but also have access to a spiritual reality. They also exist in a spiritual reality. I think that's what the wings are trying to get us to understand, is that these beings live in heaven, or have the freedom to access heaven that we, grounded here on the earth, do not. Okay, that's, I think, what we're talking about. We're talking about eagles and the idea behind birds and all the symbolism that they have. Lions. Okay, so a lion associated with pride, royalty, dominance, courage, and chivalry. Why? This is personally the one that I like to just say, well, have you seen a lion? Have you looked at those YouTube videos or at those Instagram reels of a really fully grown lion in the wild? Why is it associated with, for example, royalty? It's like, if there was going to be a king of the animals, it would be that one right there. It just works, right? Why did we make the movie with Disney, the Lion King? You didn't make the Sloth King. Sorry, sloths. Just not going to work, right? It just does not work imaginatively. The things just look so regal, so dominant, so amazing. Okay, hence our association with them as figures of royalty, as figures of like pride and chivalry, therefore, too. So in the ancient, or not the ancient, but the medieval period, one of the heraldic animals that we would usually see on your coat of arms was a lion, because it is a figure of immense pride and immense kind of power in that sense. Okay, so that's the lion. The wolf, a little bit more complex, okay, a little bit more, mixed with some negative things, symbolized by danger, symbolized with danger, loyalty, help, and cooperation. Okay, danger. Why? Well, you think, oh, the Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf, all this kind of stuff. You think of, the Grimm's fairy tales. Something I hope that you're catching on to is the proper historical order of symbols. We do not associate the American eagle or eagles with America, or eagles with freedom, because of America. We do not associate wolves with danger because of Little Red Riding Hood. Those stories, those symbols we have now, knew that these things were symbolic of whatever concepts we wanted to convey. So we chose them for those stories, for our symbols today. So the authors of Little Red Riding Hood knew that the wolf was a symbol of danger and then put it into their story, thus communicating that symbolic meaning to whoever would read that. That doesn't mean that was the origin of that particular symbolic meaning, okay? So why, before Little Red Riding Hood was written down or kind of communicated as a story, did we associate these things with danger? Well, guys, because you're walking around in the world, maybe when you're living in huts or you're a nomadic tribe, there are these predatorial canines around that can kill you, or kill your kids, or kill your dogs, or kill your little sheep, or be just a general nuisance and serious danger to you. Go watch the movie The Gray, right? It's a fantastic depiction of that old ancient fear of wolves. Why loyalty? Well, of course, because when we domesticate dogs, they become very, very inherently loyal animals. They protect you quite a bit. They kind of bond with you. They're loyal to each other as well. Hence the association with wolves with help as well. Cooperation, right? The teamwork, the pack animals. So On one hand, they are these, kind of figures of danger and figures of fear, but they're also incredibly positive figures, friendly figures as well. So it's a very unique symbol in the animal kingdom. Speaking of complex ones and unique symbols, we have the snake or the serpent. Traditionally a symbol of wisdom, cleverness, evil, and secrecy. Why? Why? Now, once again, I will usually have two responses, and I'll jump right to the evil one. Why do we associate serpents with evil? Just like with the eagle, some of my kids will say, "Oh, because Adam and Eve, because there was a snake in the Garden of Adam and in the Garden of Eden." Possibly, absolutely. Depending on how you interpret Genesis, whether it's historical, metaphorical, mythical, whatever. Yeah, that's that's an extremely early depiction or kind of link with a serpent or with a snake and evil. Sure, that's fine. But what else could we kind of link with what are the reasons could we come up with as to why a snake was associated with the concept of evil? I personally enjoy the kind of more evolutionary link that we have here. Snakes were ancient predators of what would you call it? Primates. So we have ancient primates, monkeys, gorillas, these animals that, eventually would evolve into human beings, being particularly afraid of constrictor snakes, and as well as snakes that were small and hidden and venomous. So you have this incredible kind of innate fear in our biological wiring of these serpentine predators, which could either sneak up and bite you and cause you death with their venom, or could come out of nowhere and constrict you to death. I'm not too graphic with my classes, but I like to describe to them like how if you were, an ancient primate and you see, your other monkey friend Jack get like eaten by a python, it's like that's pretty freaking scary. So you're gonna associate these things with immense fear. And something that you probably noticed by now is that or you might want to notice, is that most of our monsters, or a lot of our monsters, whether it's in myth, whether it's in your own fear, whether it's in your own creations and movies and whatever, are linked with reptilian nature and serpentine-like nature. There's just something deep in our imagination that is very much afraid of the serpentine or of the reptilian. So yeah, we have that associated with snakes a lot. Okay, so that's the negative stuff. Why wisdom and cleverness? That's a weird one. Like, why do we associate? Yes, they're all evil, they're scary. Why cleverness though? Again, people would say, oh, well, in Eden and in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, yeah, the snake was described as the cleverest or the most wry or kind of like wily of all of the creatures in the garden. Sure, okay. Think of it symbolically though. Why? Why link a snake with cleverness? I think it might be closely, possibly linked with where they live. Snakes live in the ground. Snakes live in tunnels. Snakes live in, the underbrush, which is close to the earth, a symbol of truth, a symbol of hiddenness, kind of a place that we cannot access. They know places to go that we do not. They understand pathways we do not. They know the secrets of the forest. They know the secrets of the earth. We do not. So I think that's why they're usually associated with wisdom and cleverness. So very complex, very unique, very, very universal symbol in snakes. Okay. So real quick before we get to our last section to wrap up, objects in general, some very famous objects in the world. We talked about light, we talked about fire, now of course more properly talk about the sun. Associated with knowledge, truth, wisdom, divinity, revelation, warmth, and masculinity. All of these are pretty clear, pretty much kind of continuations of what we've been discussing. Just to reiterate, why divinity? I always like to, again, remind my students of our ancestors. You're walking around in nature constantly. You're seeing the forces of nature at work. If you were going to pick some object in nature to worship, like think of yourself as like, an old, animist in the, the tribes of Native America, and you're trying to pick like which of these things in the world is the dominant spirit, right? I think the sun would be probably like in the top three at least. You know, the Egyptians certainly thought so. The Mesopotamians certainly thought so. Every major culture really seems to want to worship the sun. It's got this kind of divine presence. I mean, like right behind me, it's like this giant ball of light illuminating all of reality. It's pretty cool. Now, understatement. Now, masculinity again, why masculinity? You know, my smart kids in the back of the room will say, oh, because it's in the sky, because it has, you know, it's got that link with the upper world that masculinity is always linked with in our imagination. Sure, that could be it as well. That's probably the most easy linguistic and kind of language based connection with the gender of masculine there. Now, trees. We associate trees with life, growth, ancient, should be ancientness, nature, the world, and knowledge overall. Why life? Very clear, very obvious, because it's growing. It is alive. They are alive. I like this one, the whole idea of the ancient worlds. I think the oldest tree in the world right now is like several thousand years old, and like, you know, over five. I think someone told me it was over 5,000. You know, fact check me, please. But to conceive of that, of this thing that's living here, that is older than the United States, older than the Roman Empire, older than, you know, Jesus of Nazareth, you know, just really ancient thing that's just sitting there, you know, sucking up sunlight and kind of waving at us with its leaves. It's pretty amazing, right? So our ancestors observed that too, that these things are around for a long time. So when they think of something ancient, they like to link it with trees, nature, the world overall, and knowledge. Well, why the world? I've heard some theories that people say that we link trees with worlds and like home because, again, we evolved from primates probably. So we, you know, live in trees. We associate our lives with trees. So maybe that's a link. The mythic part of my mind goes right to, you know, Yggdrasil in Norse mythology, the world tree. And knowledge, of course. Why? Well, because it's this ancient thing. It's this thing we can draw wisdom from. You know, you think of Adam and Eve, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, all this kind of stuff. So knowledge, life, home, all things associated with trees. Okay, the sword. Really, I'm cheating with this one. I'm cheating because swords don't appear in the natural world. They are constructed symbols. So I broke my pattern here. A sword is a symbol of defense, war, truth, action, and nobility. Okay. Why defense? Pretty obvious, right? Like a sword is an ancient tool before guns, you know, a little bit after clubs and spears and all that kind of stuff. It's this blade that you, if you're holding it, people don't want to get near you. People don't want to mess with you. It's hard for us to understand because, like, you know, a lot of us don't deal with truly sharp instruments anymore. If you're you know, your friends or your family at home are hunters or are butchers, and if they've ever shown you a truly sharp blade, uh, there's a there's a presence about that like, you know, our dinner or our steak knives don't really have. My friend got me a Japanese blade to cut meat with. I sliced my finger open with it a couple times, and like I have like to this day, like I still have like an aura about that blade where I'm like, that's like a real cutting tool. So just take that and imagine that, like, you know, three times longer, and someone's holding that or whips that out, you know, and kind of waves it around. It's like, that's scary. That's something you don't want to mess with. Hence, it's a fantastic tool of defense. War, obviously, sure. Um, why truth? Why do we associate truth with swords? Like, why, if you're Catholic, right, you're going to walk into a cathedral, you're going to see a statue of St. Paul. St. Paul's got the Bible in one hand, he's got a sword in the other hand. The sword is facing downward, but why? Why does, and that's what it means, that it's truth that he's holding there in the form of a sword. Why? Some of my students say it's because it cuts through lies. A sword kind of helps you discern, helps you cut away any of the confusion. Some of my students, thinking about this particular lesson, will say, oh, it's because it's created out of the earth. It's created out of minerals in the earth. So it's formed from truth, possibly. I think both of those work perfectly fine, but nevertheless, it is still a very powerful symbol of truth that is maybe being used as a weapon. That was one of my favorite interpretations, is that the greatest weapon in the world is true love. You know, if you want to be a fairy tale kind of author about it, But notice what I'm saying there, true love, truth. There's something about truth that makes it a fantastically powerful weapon if you can use it properly and if you can have it. Action, of course, makes sense. Pardon me. Right, because swords, we need they are active tools that we will use. Nobility, of course, because, not every person could have a sword in the ancient world. If you had a sword, that was a pretty clear sign of your status or your wealth. So yeah. All right. So those are basic symbols. Okay, we went through a lot. Are there more? Yes, there's nearly endless symbols, ladies and gents, because you can keep combining those with many different things. I think if I want to skip ahead a little bit here, yeah, I'll get to that in the end, but projects, or we're going to see how we can combine those really well. So I threw this in as a little side note, as a kind of cheating way that I could squeeze this into one of our videos. Metaphors of life, I have 4 patterns here of metaphors and structures and symbols and metaphors kind of working together that we will typically see in literature, in life, in your dreams, in art overall. What are these particular patterns of metaphors? The first one is a cave, where we have figures maybe it's trapped in a cave, trying to get out of the cave, desiring to get to a better place. You have someone in a place of confusion, of fear, of ignorance, of despair, trying to get out into the light where it is more safe, warm, and happy. This is a universal pattern that we see all over the place. We see this, of course. I think most of my really nerdy humanities kids will say, "Oh, this is Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave." Someone trying to move from a state of ignorance into a state of enlightenment. Sure, but I mean, like, it's not going to be hard for us to go through different movies, different TV shows, different books, different myths, and find the same pattern, right? Someone kind of in a subterranean place of confusion, trying to get to a place of clarity. Well, the elements there are pretty clear. The symbols here are pretty clear. We have cave, right? The cave, a place that is beneath the earth, a place where maybe truth does lie, but it's hidden in darkness. Prisoners, right? The idea that we are trapped down here. We are kind of encircled by darkness and chaos. That there are shadows, right? There are things moving around that we are unsure what they really are. There's that confusion again. And of course, we have what we're reaching towards, which is the sun and the outside world, okay? So that's one pattern of symbols that we will see very, very frequently in literature. The garden is another one. Now, I'm using even the term the garden very loosely here. What I mean by garden is, as it says here, a walled-in place of construction, organized, an organized creation surrounded by wilderness, okay? So it's a place that is a structured fenced-in place of safety where we can kind of create things in an orderly sort of way, a garden, if you will. Well, what's the danger? The danger is that there are snakes, there are wolves, there are dangers outside of the garden that could sneak in and ruin the garden and provide danger for us. I laugh every time like winter happens again, every time winter, fades away, because here in upstate New York, what do we have to deal with? As soon as winter goes away, what starts to wake up? All the spiders, all the bugs, and all that kind of stuff. So we invite people over to come and spray our houses so that we can keep the bugs out, keep the rodents out, keep the animals out. That's the same pattern that we see in real life that we will also see in literature. Of course, people are going to link this immediately with the Garden of Eden. It's the same thing. The idea that there was a garden, that God had this walled-in place that Adam and Eve could live in and keep danger out, mostly. Now, what are the symbolic elements here? The inner garden, right? This place of safety, this place of creativity, this place of life, this place of general harmony. The walls, the structured kind of places where we don't want to move out from. That is a place or a thing that is keeping all of the dangers out, but keeping us safe within. And then the wilderness on the outside. What could this mean? This is pretty clearly another one of those symbols of chaos, another one of those symbols of disorder, of something that is hidden from us, something that is potentially dangerous. And if you want to get into an advanced kind of symbol here, I was always surprised kids picked up on this. If I drew this up on the wall, I would say, yeah, wilderness is a symbol of chaos or is another form of chaos. But notice what the garden is. The garden is crazy chaos on one side, right? Crazy wilderness, but then kind of when the wilderness comes in, it becomes more solid and more kind of controlled. That's what you're doing when you're gardening. You're controlling the chaos, you're kind of ordering it. So it's a good balance between order and chaos. That's where that creation, that life kind of really happens. It's a good kind of artistic depiction of that idea. The serpents, of course, whether it's a serpent or a bug or a rodent or whatever thing you want to talk about, it's that there's something out there that is malevolent and that is harmful that we don't want in. We want to keep that out of our garden, out of our creative process. Okay. Um, Anywhere you go, guys, where you see a walled in place, where we try to vet out negative things, whether it's your own immune system, whether it's borders to a country, whether it's security spots in a building, that's the exact same metaphor playing itself out all over again in reality. Okay. The sea. Okay. It's not really an accurate title for this one, but it's this notion of a person or a group of people out at sea trying to make it to safety, all the while they are dealing with whatever dangers there are in that particular place in life. So the elements here are, of course, land, right? Land is stability, it is order, it is safety. We get there and we're safe and we're good. We don't have to worry about drowning anymore. We don't have to worry about the constantly changing motions of life. The sea is all of that. It's a constant, uncontrolled, unpredictable, unstable way of living, of existing. It's chaos, basically, with a clear danger that if you fall over, you're going to be even more danger. You could drown, right? You could have to put up with whatever's underneath the water, whether it's a serpent or a kraken or a shark or whatever you want to call it. Storms, waves, things that are going to possibly knock over your ship. You're trying to make it to safety. You're trying to make it to a stable way of living. All the while you are trying to navigate yourself in your life through the chaos of life in the form of the water, right? So this is another common metaphor of life that we will see throughout literature, and that people actually like to use in their language a lot. I don't know if you've caught on to this by now, but a lot of the language that we use, a lot of our figurative language, is symbolic in and of itself. So if like someone's saying like I feel like I'm drowning, or I'm being tossed around by life, these are metaphorical and symbolic terms that are referencing this particular metaphor. Okay, last one. My personal favorite is the dragon slayer metaphor. This idea that there is a situation where there's a beast out there, usually whether it's like a dragon, a snake-like beast, or whatever monster you want to imagine it as, that has a treasure or that has something that it is hiding from us beneath the earth. And that creature is causing terror, is causing, the threat of destruction around it. This is a pattern that we see very, very frequently, obviously in fantastical and mythic literature, but we see it psychologically play out all the time as well. So, for example, what are the elements here? We have the houses, right? The villages, the places where you're living. That's kind of like the inner garden. That's like the land in the previous metaphors. It's that place of stability, that place of safety, of comfort. We have the dragon, though, which is whatever monster, whatever threat there is lurking out there that's going to come in and harm you and harm your life and tear it all down. You have the hero, right? That is a person who needs to go out and confront this. This might be you. This might be someone in your life. This might be something that you're trying to become, where you need to like actually get out there and solve this problem. And you have, yeah, that cave, right? The treasure, something that, down below where the creature lives, where the danger lies. And you need to go down there and get the treasure. Well, what is the treasure? That's the reward that you're going to get for defeating this thing. So we're going to talk about this in much, much more detail in the hero's journey video in this universal series. But usually what happens when you walk through a metaphor like this in life, or when you overcome something in your life that is metaphorically or symbolically like a dragon to you, you will receive a reward. You will receive some sort of treasure that makes the whole process worth it, that you get some kind of reward for putting up with and conquering your dragon. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail. I'm just going to show you as a fun last note. But what I'd like to have my students do, what you could do to kind of bolster your understanding of symbolism and kind of just get a little bit of a taste as to how complex it can get, is I have my students create for themselves a crest or a kind of a symbol that is that they identify with themselves. However, I make them do it in the form of like a family crest or a standard, like in Game of Thrones or in Harry Potter, where it's at least three symbols, whether it's colors, animals, objects, elements, whatever, like working together or woven together to create a specific meaning. So for example, what I have my students do is if they, I'll use this for example. I've had students do something very similar to this one. They like the deer. So you have a deer, the Baratheon symbol up there as a black deer, a black stag actually, with a crown around it on a field of gold, basically. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 symbols in there. I see the symbol of black. I see the symbol of yellow, or gold. I see the symbol of a crown. I see the symbol of a stag. So all of those carry a ton of meaning. However, in this particular instance, they don't necessarily, because some of those meanings are filtered out. They could be changed a bit. So for example, do you think that the black in this particular symbol is meant to symbolize, evil, danger, darkness, despair? Probably not. I don't think that's what they were going for when they made this. I think it means something else, maybe like elegance, maybe like mystery, maybe like, sternness, seriousness, solemnity. Maybe there's something like that. So, well, how did I come up with that? Remember all the way back to the beginning of this discussion. Symbols change in their meaning depending on the context. Okay. So just like that happened there, that's going to happen with whatever you're creating too. So if you want, go and create your own, create a standard for yourself, create a symbol for yourself. In my particular classes, I usually will ask that my students write a couple paragraphs describing what particularly their symbols mean, just to share how they view themselves and how they understand symbolism. Okay. But that's symbolism. That's a little bit about the metaphors of life that we're going to see throughout other forms of literature. And that's the end of this particular video. So thanks very much. And we will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.